Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Ceora and I'm going to be talking about learning tips that every developer should know. So a little bit about me. I'm a software engineer based in Philadelphia and I'm also a learner advocate at Egghead.io. I teach at Code with Closey and BSD education in the summer and I'm currently learning Python in cloud engineering. I've also failed at learning plenty of times in the past. So why am I someone you should listen to when it comes to this topic? Well, like I said earlier, I failed at learning plenty of times in the past. I even wrote an article about the 5 mistakes I made my first year learning how to code. So because of that, I've done lots of research on this very topic. I've watched videos, I've read articles, and I've also even taken a course on learning how to learn. So what I'm emphasizing right now will be based on a combination of my own research and personal experiences. Throughout this presentation, you'll hear me reference a lot of talks and articles and things like that I've read or listened to. I'm going to be putting together an article that's going to feature the courses I've taken, the videos I've watched, the talks I've listened to, so that you can look at them too if you want at your leisure. So why is this relevant to you? Why should you care about learning, about knowing how to learn? Well, our industry is ever changing, so there's always something new to learn. So you'll find that when you know how to learn, you'll gain a better foundational knowledge, which is super important, especially for those who are just starting out. You'll also waste less time and you'll retain information for the long term. You'll also become a better teacher. And this is super important because teaching is something that a lot of us eventually have to do in this industry. And if you're more interested in knowing how to become a better teacher, I highly recommend watching Ali Spittle's talk about how to teach code. But in short, what I'm going to say is that being a good learner makes you a better teacher. So those are some of the reasons why it's so important to know how to learn. So let's get right into it. Tip number 1 is to focus. But focus how? That's such a broad term. When I say focus, I mean in 3 main ways. The first way is to focus on one topic at a time. There are so many different things to learn in tech, and it can be easy to try to focus on learning different languages and technologies all at the same time. This is definitely something I did, and I found that I became a jack of all trades and a master of none. I was never able to really gain a substantial knowledge of any coding language. So this is why something I kind of discourage people from doing if you would like to have a more in-depth knowledge of a certain topic or language, try to focus on one language at a time and try to focus on a few learning materials at a time. That's our second way you want to focus is don't bog yourself down with trying to take a bunch of different courses at once, trying to read a bunch of books at once. This can ultimately lead to, again, not having a substantial grasp of the information. This is, again, something that I did. So try to focus on a few things at once, a few learning materials at once. And if you can, try to learn in a distraction-free zone. This is nearly impossible for most of us, especially now, but try to limit distractions as much as possible. So for me, that means turning the notifications off on my phone. Sometimes I have to put my phone across the room. I also like to listen to white noise playlists on YouTube, which again I'll be listing in my article of resources for anyone that's interested. And tip number 2 is to use the Pomodoro Technique. This is one of my favorite learning techniques out there. What is the Pomodoro Technique? Well, it's the workflow of working or studying for 25 minutes and taking a 5-minute break. Working for 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break. So what makes the Pomodoro Technique so special? Well, it helps us to tackle procrastination. Having a 5-minute break at the end of your 25-minute work session tricks your brain into looking forward to a reward so that while you're working, your brain is more focused on the reward or the break to come. This helps us to hijack procrastination which can be a huge barrier for some of us when we're trying to get things done. Using the Pomodoro Technique also helps us to create focused and productive study sessions. And you'll find that you can get more out of less. What do I mean when I say this? Well, because you'll have more focused study sessions, you'll be gaining more in-depth knowledge, and you'll be doing this in less time. So you'll be getting more out of less, which is super important now since most of us are super busy. Tip number 3 is to take breaks. This goes right in tandem with the Pomodoro Technique, but even if you decide not to use the Pomodoro Technique, it's still important to have breaks. Taking short breaks during your study sessions can help take your mind off of the information that you're learning, and doing this can help your brain to do a lot of work in the background. I also suggest adding some light physical activity into your breaks. I don't mean like hardcore exercising unless there's something that you're into, but more like taking short walks or even just getting up from your desk and walking around your house or your apartment, and maybe taking a light stretch. Doing this can help your brain to synthesize information in the background. Think about times when you've taken a walk or taken a shower and you came up with a solution to a problem. This is kind of how that works. So make sure to take your breaks. It does your brain a lot of favors. Tip number 4 is to get rest. Now, I've noticed that a lot of people tend to skip out on sleep in order to get more studying done, especially when they're starting off their coding journey. But this is not such a good idea. So if you can, try not to skip out on sleep to get more studying done. Our brains do so much work in the background when we're sleeping, again, kind of like when we take breaks, but even more so since, sleep is like a super long break that we definitely need. So try to avoid cramming if you can. I'm not going to give you any hard and fast rules as far as how much sleep you should get. Just get enough rest for you. Do whatever works for you as far as that's concerned. Just don't miss out on sleep. Tip number 5 is to take good notes. And as a learner advocate at Egghead, I could not skip out on this one. So here's some of my tips for taking good notes. Here are some things that work for me. Number 1 is to only highlight key information. Try to discern what the key points are in whatever information you're going over and highlight those, focus on those, draw your attention to those points. Number 2 is to put information in your own words. To put information in your own words mean that you have to truly understand what you're learning, which can help you to, again, discern what parts of the information you don't know so well and what parts you need to work on. So definitely try not to just copy and paste what you're reading. Try to put it in your own words. Number 3 is I like to handwrite my notes. Not everyone does, but I find that I retain the information better when I handwrite them. So do what works for you. But for me, handwritten notes yield the best results. Number 4 is probably my most favorite tip lately. It's been the tip that I've been using the most, and that is using illustrations and metaphors. If you're more interested in hearing about this more in depth, I highly recommend watching Maggie Appleton's talk about visual metaphors. She gave it at Women of React. Again, I'll be listing that in my article of resources. Using illustrations is great because it helps you to bring some of the abstract concepts that we're learning and that we have to master. It helps you to bring them down to a human level so you can relate them to things that you're familiar with, which will help you to learn information even better. Number 5 is something that I don't hear as much, but I like to use active recall when I take my notes. What is active recall? Well, it's literally the act of recalling information. Think about an exam. Think about a question and answer format. You read the question and it forces you to recall the information. I like to write my notes in this question and answer format because it helps me, especially when I'm reviewing the information, to automatically see where I need to improve. If I can't answer the question, and it's obviously something that I need to do extra work with. And number 6 is to do what works for you. If you're a visual learner, Make illustrations, make drawings, do mind maps. If you're an audio learner, watch videos, do whatever works for you. Find your learning style and work with that. And here are some pictures of my notes. On the left, you'll see some notes that I took using the active recall method, the question and answer format. And then on the right, you'll see a diagram, an illustration I did of a burrito. It's supposed to illustrate how slicing lists works in Python. I imagine sharing a burrito with my friend and cutting it up into pieces. And that's kind of how slicing lists works in my brain anyway. Tip number 6 is to apply what you learn. So how do you apply what you learn? By building projects, big or small. Sometimes building a project can seem intimidating, so start small and build on it over time. This is something I love doing because it helps you to see how your knowledge is growing. If you start off with a simple calculator and build it out to something that has much more functionality, or even a small game, something I love doing. Also, try to code along with whatever courses or videos you're watching. It helps you to take your learning to the active level opposed to passively learning. Again, you'll retain information much more. Learning by doing is such a strong learning technique. So even if you're curious about a certain behavior, or if you're curious to see if a certain solution will work, test it out. Type out the code, do it. You'll grasp the information so much better. Tip number 7 is to learn in public. What is learning in public? Basically, to boil it down in its most basic form, learning in public is learning in front of other people, teaching other people what you're learning. A great way to do this, there are several great ways to do this. My favorite are to write articles. You can write articles on dev.to. You can stream yourself building projects on Twitch. You can even share what you're learning on social media, like sharing on Twitter through 100 Days of Code. Even if you're not someone who's a fan of sharing information online, you can even share what you're learning with friends and family. You can even share what you're learning with inanimate objects. You can use the rubber ducking method to explain what you're learning. Just teach someone or something what you're learning, and you'll be learning in public. Tip number 8 is to do the hard stuff. This was something that I was extremely horrible at. I fell into the awful cycle of running into something that was difficult, giving up and running away, and then coming back and forgetting everything that I learned. This is a cycle that I fell into over and over again. So, don't be like me. Do the hard stuff. Try to solve hard problems. If you're still struggling, take a break, whether it be for 5 minutes or for the whole day. Then, after your break, try to solve the problem again. If you're still struggling, ask for help. Go to Twitter. Join some beginner-friendly, or whatever level you are, friendly communities out there. There are plenty that have people who are definitely willing to help you out. You can even post on Stack Overflow if you like. I don't use Stack Overflow as much, but it's definitely an option for getting help. And tip number 9 is to be consistent. Again, this was something that I was not good at, but there's huge value in practicing consistently. Now, you don't have to practice every day. Some of us can't do that. We can't fit that into our schedule, which is totally fine. Just build the habit of coding. Try to do it 3 days a week if you can, 4 days a week, whatever works for you and your schedule. And if you can, try the 100 Days of Code challenge. It really helps you to become accountable to a huge community, a huge supportive community. And it also helps you to build that habit of coding every day. And we're pretty much done with our presentation. Just to summarize it all here, the key things that you need to remember. Focus. Use the Pomodoro Technique if you would like. Try to make sure to take breaks and get rest. Take good notes. Apply what you learn by building projects. Learn in public. Do the hard stuff and be consistent. And that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, any feedback, or if you just want to chat, reach out to me on Twitter at Ceora_. You can also visit my website, Ceora4.com, and you can find some of my articles on dev.to. Thank you so much for watching.